Our friends at NetSuite from Oracle want to help you turbocharge your growth. Visit netsuite.com/legends right now. On this episode, how to embrace and overcome adversity, how to build a world-class counseling or consulting business, and how Joe Sanek became the category king of private practitioners. All right. Hey ho, let's go. Hello, my legendary friends. This is Christopher Lochhead, and man, am I ever glad that you are joining us for this episode of Legends and Losers. Ever since we recorded this dialogue, I've been dying to share Joe with you. Joe Sanek is a private counseling practitioner who has become a real example of, I think, a powerful niche down. In that he has become a guru to that world. He has become the category king of helping other people in consulting businesses, counseling businesses, any kind of a private practice, any kind of a wellness kind of a business, helping them become more successful, marketing themselves and running their business. And the thing that's really cool about that is, it's not necessarily intuitively obvious that you could design a legendary career and a legendary, in his case, consulting business, helping other folks in private practice. But with the advent of the internet, and most importantly, Joe's legendary podcast, The Practice of the Practice, he's been able to do that. And so he's an incredible example of how you can really, if you will, make your own place in the world. And that's why I'm excited to share this dialogue today with Joe with you. Welcome to Legends and Losers. We aspire to have real conversations with real people about what it takes to design a legendary business and a legendary life. And we are super excited to welcome our first sponsor, NetSuite by Oracle. They, like us, are focused on empowering entrepreneurs to grow. And I don't know about you, but I think all of us who are in a position to help entrepreneurs need to do what we can. We're at the lowest level of recorded entrepreneurship in American history. And as you know, entrepreneurs are the people who build our world. More Americans work for a smaller entrepreneurial company than a large company. And we know that most of the innovation, most of the big new ideas, most of the cool shit comes from startups and smaller growth-oriented businesses. And so I think we need to do everything we can to support those entrepreneurs, those women and men who are really taking our world forward. Our good friends at NetSuite provide the platform for growth for entrepreneurs. Everything you need to run your business. It's a complete business management system in the cloud, offering, now look, we live in this real-time cloud, social, mobile, IoT, AI, blockchain, machine learning, LOL, IMG, DOG, FART kind of world. And in the world that we're in today, entrepreneurs need the data. They need the information about their inventory, their cash flow, their customers, their people, etc. And they need it on their smartphone. That's what makes NetSuite so awesome. NetSuite has guided businesses across all industries through many of the phases of growth, from the early startup stages in the garage all the way through to the IPO and beyond. NetSuite now is offering listeners of Legends and Losers a free hour-long business review session with an expert in your industry, all about how to turbocharge your growth. To get your free growth review from our friends at NetSuite, go to netsuite.com/legends. That's netsuite.com/legends, and you'll get set up for a really cool briefing, an expert in your industry that can tell you about maybe some untapped areas to turbocharge your growth. Check it out, netsuite.com/legends. And don't forget, when you support NetSuite, you support Legends and Losers. All right, Joe Sanek, he's the host of the Practice podcast, a great podcast. He's an incredible example of a niche down. He's made his place in the world. He's deeply committed to helping practitioners, coaches of all kinds, consultants, anybody in really private practice, help them grow their business and their practice. He has a master's in counseling psychology and community counseling, and he's a successful mental wellness therapist. Here he is, Joe Sanek, on Legends and Losers.
I just want to help the world be better than I found it. I mean, there's this old kind of rabbi and Hebrew way of looking at the world that if you find something broken, you should fix it. And I'm not Jewish, but I think that really resonates with me. And so I've intentionally, since my freshman year of college, traveled the world to just see what the rest of the world lives like. And at a very young age, I got to see some pretty rough things. And from that, it's like one of those things, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And when you've seen poverty, like, in Haiti, I think I was 21, 22. And I remember I was walking down the road with this pastor that was working there. And he was this like overweight kind of Kentucky pastor that just his only goal was to get people to say a prayer and to convert. And I said to him, Haiti is less than 200 miles from like southern Florida. How can our neighbors live like this? And he said, they just need Jesus. And no matter what your faith background is, that rubbed me the wrong way, that it just was this one prayer that was the problem versus, well, there's some global issues going on here. Like when Napoleon wanted to fund his war, he sold off like the Louisiana Purchase and sold off Haiti and moved on for his war. And Haiti was left with a massive debt. And that's why they've stayed in poverty for 200 years. And so that always rubbed me the wrong way. And I thought, well, what can I do to actually live out these inclinations I have inside of me? And so started a microfinance program down there where we gave $100.
Hold on a sec.
Yeah.
So how old were you when these thoughts that you just described start swirling around in your head, Jim?
Oh man, even before that, I probably was like in late high school. And part of it, my parents really, so my dad's Catholic, my mom's Protestant. My mom had got, she was in a domestic violence situation and left her family, or left her husband, and then met my dad during that process. But my dad's family, who was like Polish Catholic, kind of very traditional, they had problems with the fact that my mom was Protestant, that she had been already married, that she was dating my dad while she wasn't officially divorced. And so I'm a product of these really unique parents that are both firstborns, and on both sides of the family had to be trailblazers. And early on in my experiences in life, my mom and dad would really kind of say, God gave you big shoulders for a reason. Like I remember this time I was a bellman at the Holiday Inn. And
how old were you, Joe?
I would have been, I was old enough to drink at this time. So like 21, 22, like really just like early on in.
And the Holiday Inn bellman doesn't get the same level of tips as the St. Regis bellman, right?
Oh, come on. No, yeah, exactly the same, man.
Yeah. I'm just trying to situate my head here.
Oh, no. It's
and you're the bellman of the Holiday Inn in what town?
In Traverse City.
In Traverse City, right.
And
which is a happening Holiday Inn, right?
Oh, it is a happening Holiday Inn. It's right in the water. And as Holiday Inn chains go, I would say
it's a nice one.
It's a really nice one. It's one of the few places that's right on the water here that has a hotel attached to it. We have a beautiful kind of northern Michigan bay and everything. And so as Holiday Inns go, they've actually de-emphasized the Holiday Inn-ness of them, and they're the West Shore Resort.
So they're trying to get very ding-dong about it now.
They are.
Yeah, okay.
And so this lady who's probably in her 40s or so is sitting.
So young,
way young, but she's a dishwasher at the Holiday Inn. And so life hasn't treated her that great if she's washing dishes in her mid-40s. She gets off her shift. She sits down at the bar and orders a beer. There's literally nobody in the bar. And this middle manager comes in and says, I don't remember what her name is, but it says Doris. Doris, what are you doing? You know that staff aren't allowed to drink at the bar. And she's in her regular clothes. She's not like has a name tag on or anything like that. And she goes, I'm off my shift. I'm going to have a beer. And I paid for it. And he goes, you know that that's the policy. And she goes, then fire me. So he fires her on the spot. And I'm just thinking, that is not right. This lady's in her 40s washing dishes. She just wants to have a beer. So when my shift gets done at 11, what do? I change into my street clothes and I go sit and I have a beer at the bar, sitting there with Doris having a beer. Finish the first beer, and I, at that point in my life, one beer did me in. Now I've advanced. I've done some training.
Yeah, you've got a couple of a round or two in.
Yeah. So then this guy comes in and he goes, Joe, didn't you see what happened to Doris? And I'm like, yeah. And I don't think it's right. I think it's ridiculous. And he says, you're fired too. And so I go back to, so at that time I was protesting against spending around $2 in gas, so I'd bike everywhere. So at that time, that seemed like way more money than I could handle to spend $2 a gallon on gas. So I bike home to my parents' house that I'm staying at for the summer, write up this letter that says how I felt like he had verbally harassed me, which he had been pretty mean to me and to Doris throughout the day. Come back and turn in this letter to the CEO. And the next morning at like 6:30 in the morning, the CEO calls me and says, "What happened last night?" And so I just walk through the situation. Doris gets her job back. I get my job back. And this guy ends up getting a ding on his record. And so I feel like there's always been this sense of justice, of doing what's right, of
so you're a bit of a militant. You're a bit of a punk rocker, a justice warrior.
I think I was way more that maybe at the time, like in your face.
You seem so, there's something very affable about you. You don't seem like a punk rocker.
Yeah, in college I had leopard print hair and blue hair. I was in like rock bands and traveled around for a while. So
all right, so
I was
leopard print hair.
Screamo. I was the screamer in a screamo band for a while.
You were the lead screamo.
The lead screamo. My brother was the lead singer, and then whenever they needed backup screams, that was me.
Okay, and did you play an instrument, or what were you doing in the band?
Yeah, I played guitar also.
Nice. Do you still play at all?
Yeah, actually, I've picked up piano recently. We got one for free, and so I've just been tinkering around with it. And I have a 3-year-old and 6-year-old, so I've been mostly learning songs from Frozen and Moana and all the hit cartoons to impress my 3 and 6-year-old, and that's the only audience I need right now.
Well, that's very sweet of you, but it sounds terrible to me.
I know, for a guy without kids, it's like,
oh God.
No, yeah, I love it.
It sounds like a hockey stick to the nuts.
So I think this sense of justice has really been in me for a long time, and it's carried over into my work in a lot of different ways. But it's just, there's people that don't even have access to clean water in the world. Like our toilet water is cleaner than half the world's water. And if we don't approach our businesses as they succeed with a sense of, I guess, gratitude, then we're really missing out on a deeper purpose in what I would say is the human experience beyond just a business or a life or make money or have fun, whatever your kind of goals are. I want to maintain that sense of gratitude no matter how successful my business is.
So you spend, you put your time where your mouth is too on this topic, right? You don't just write checks.
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's different phases. Right now, we're in really a busy phase with little kids. And so trying to build a sense of community with our friends and a sense of kind of ideas and thinking differently about the world. But I think that there are phases when checks are really what needs to happen. That people need funding for their projects. And there's times when you have that extra time to put in based on your phase of life. So for me, there's no sense of judgment on where people are spending their time. I just want to see them.
No, I just meant for you personally. I didn't necessarily mean it as a value judgment, but that you're a person who contributes your hard-earned dollars and your physical and mental elbow grease, right?
Yeah, one thing that we've been doing with Practice of the Practice is this thing called the World Changers Challenge. And so 3 times a year or so, we'll do something that's sort of, in the tech world, it might be called a sprint. And that's kind of new for counselors or people in private practice, which is my...
But you don't do a counseling sprint where I come in and I say I'm suffering from some kind of a upset in my life that I need help with. And you say, okay, we'll just put you on a 2-week sprint and you'll be fine. Normally, this is a 12-month process.
I don't, but actually I have a guy that does intensives here. So people will fly in for 4 hours a day, and they'll be in here for a week, and they'll come, for half a day to work with him around substance abuse issues. So he has a.
I was just fucking around. I didn't know people actually did that.
Yeah.
So it's like Shark Week for substance abuse.
Oh yeah. They stay at a hotel. They come down, from 9 till noon every day, or 9 to 1, and work with Steve here at Mental Wellness Counseling. And yeah, they just go full tilt. And yeah, but these World Changers challenges, we just wrapped up one that was writing an ebook in a month, and people that are doing really important work but have no idea how to do it. And so they have ideas like, hey, I do counseling with vets and I don't know how to write a book. And so we walked through for a month as a really large group, and our last group had 600 people. On how
Is that like a giant mastermind? What would you I mean, because the cool thing about what you're doing, Joe, on a challenge like this is you're creating a movement and like a, maybe this is a corny ass way of saying it, but like a giant support group focused on a particular, I don't know, would you call it a BHAG? Is this a big, hairy, audacious goal, or it's at least a mini BHAG, a midget BHAG?
I call them going after ambitious results.
Okay. But the cool thing is it's sort of like Weight Watchers or something, right? Where you got a group of people focused on the same thing, kind of all in it together.
And so often I think that's what happens is that you just kind of you let life come at you. So you check your email, you do what has to keep your business going, but you never zoom out and say, wait a second, how am I really trying to affect the world in a positive way that's different than everyone else in my field? And so it may be an ebook, but my goal is that that's just a spark. And so for some person that has never even considered writing an ebook, it feels like a BHAG. It feels like this enormous thing. But then when they do it, that becomes their norm, where they then kind of got one hit of the drug and let's just keep this thing going, where they want to then say, okay, well, now what could I do? Well, you could launch a podcast around how to help vets. Oh, now you could get interviewed on people's podcasts. You could have an e-course that helps people. You could get grant funding for this thing. And then all of a sudden, this thing that was literally never on their map, all of a sudden becomes an entirely new product within the private practice world. And so for me to see that shift from that's something for other people to do, to, oh, I'm at least considering that I could do that, to I just did that, to what goes beyond that, that shift, that gets me geeked out to see people really.
And how many books ended up getting written in that month period, Joe?
Yeah, so we had, and a lot of people I think structured it out and didn't complete the entire thing, but they're still working on it. And so we had about 200 really active participants.
Wow.
I would say we had probably 20 or so books, and books we defined as, a 10-page ebook's good enough. Whatever you say is the minimum viable product. You can really say
it could be a white paper, but fuck it, we'll call it an ebook, and Bob's your uncle.
Well, and so what can you actually get done rather than say, oh my gosh, I could never write a 50-page book. Okay, write 10 short ebooks, and then you can lump them together into a bigger book. Just freaking do something. And so to see people get inspired, I think we had 10 completed books. We probably have around 150 to 200, I would say 80% of the way books. And then around, what would that leave? About 400 people that are watching the videos, going back to the videos. We took all the content from the Facebook Lives within that private group and had it transcribed and put that into an ebook about how to write ebooks that we're giving away to our world changers. So then it becomes a training that I can multi-purpose. Videos I can then use also to do inbound marketing. And so if I use all those different things, it then helps other people to grow beyond just that 1 month sprint as well.
So you're also teaching them to do essentially what you do, right?
Yeah. I mean, my goal is to help them be highly successful in whatever area they want to be in.
And what percentage of your work these days, Joe, is practicing what you practice versus being the media company, if I could put it that way, that you've become?
Yeah, so the actual counseling, I'm only doing 2 or 3 sessions a week now, and the rest of my team at Mental Wellness Counseling takes on the majority of the counseling sessions. And then I'm growing the practice of the practice team, so we have a 4-person team now that really is focused in on specialty areas. And so we have one person that she's a specialist on group practices, and she's also a specialist in regards to adding insurance to your practice. We have a marketing person.
Adding insurance to your practice?
Yeah,
for practitioners who currently do not take insurance?
Correct. Or that they're taking insurance at their practice, and then they're saying, how do I get off of some of those insurances? How do I negotiate rates? How do I make my billing streamlined?
How do I get fucking paid because these bastards don't pay me?
Oh my gosh, that could be a whole episode on its own.
Yeah. I'll never forget, Joe, I had a dear friend who was a pediatrician. And I still have her as a friend, but she's no longer a pediatrician. She's retired. But anyway, when she told me, and I forget how many docs were in her office, but maybe 6 or somewhere in that range. Not huge, but not small kind of thing. Anyway, She told me they had a full-time person that all they did was chase down the insurance companies to try to get their money, because first they say it wasn't covered, and then they say it was elective, and then I don't know what they say, and then and they screw the docs over just as bad as they screw us over.
Oh, it's crazy. When I took Medicaid, I got $53 per session. They would only authorize 3 sessions. If someone no-showed, we weren't allowed to charge for that, which I understand because these are people often in poverty. And then we'd spend at least an hour on the phone. So for $159, we would spend 5 hours of time trying to get paid. And that doesn't include staff time. That doesn't include rent. Or I could have a private pay practice where I bill out of network. I could charge $159 per session and give away 4 sessions and have less stress, or just work, 1 session. And then we wonder why people in poverty end up getting, people that are not always highly qualified, that are fresh out of grad school. And there's people that are doing great work around the kind of the Medicaid issue. But why do the top achieving practitioners say, I want to jump out of insurance? Well, part of it's that insurance problem, part of it's the payment problem, how much work it is and how much staff time you have to pay just to get paid for something underpaid.
It's wackadoo. It's completely wackadoo.
Yeah, it's totally nuts.
Yeah. I mean, I go to a concierge doc, and she doesn't you can't use insurance to pay her. You just have to pay her out of your pocket, because so the only way this works is if I don't fucking have to chase those people. So we don't take insurance.
I mean, that's the type of person that I'm training for the most part, is how do you have a practice that's a healthcare practice that you can grow, that's sustainable and scalable, so that you can do something bigger. If you are running after insurance claims and you have to work 40 or 50 or 60 hours a week, is that the best use of your time as a highly trained doctor, mental health provider, chiropractor, massage therapist, whatever the healthcare practice is? Or what if you saw 15 people a week, had a team of other people that you were bringing in referrals for, and then you can do some big world-changing idea? That's really what I'm trying to help people do, is to move past just the model of you're in the chair and that's the only way to make money.
I forgot I was on mute there. So here's my big question. What does it feel like to go from being a practitioner, a counselor, or you tell me what you used to call yourself or still call yourself?
Just I was a counselor, I'd say.
Counselor. To now you're like this media guy. You're this whole new guy. You're this whole new category of thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, is that a weird transition to go from being a practitioner to being, I don't know how you think about yourself. You're like this mini celebrity in this niche, right? You're like the guy that everybody goes
really
to.
Weird is to get those. I just got an email today. This lady wants me to help out with a program she's launching, and she said, I'm kind of bashfully asking you. I feel like I shouldn't even try to approach you, and it's like the Great Oz, and it is odd because I feel like the approach I've tried to take is to be highly approachable. It really happened slowly. In 2011, after my first daughter was born, I was doing this therapeutic sailing program where we took at-risk kids out sailing.
I've been dying to ask you about this therapeutic sailing.
Yeah, so we took kids on this traditionally rigged wooden sailboat. So it was about 60 feet long, the only replica of which the Kennedy family has. And it was donated to this nonprofit. And they said, it's supposed to help kids. We have no idea what to do. We're boat guys, and I have a background in experiential.
Make sure they don't drown.
Yeah, make sure they don't drown. Safety first, and then we want to have mental safety and actually have some outcomes here. So we developed a program where we saw just crazy results: an 80% drop in symptoms, in intensity and frequency. Which means if a kid comes in on Monday and says, "I'm feeling really just anxious, worried, depressed in life." Okay, on a 0 to 10 scale, where are you at? Oh, I'm at a 10. That by the end of the week, they'd be reporting that it was a 2, or that their parents would be reporting it was a 2, or their foster care workers it's a 2. With 98% of the kids stayed off probation for the next year, whereas the stats would say that probably about 90 of them would go back on probation. So we do this program where really they learn to sail this boat. And by Friday, the captain and I just would sit back, and these kids would take this 3-ton sailboat that's worth millions of dollars off the dock on their own. They'd lift the sails. And these are kids that stole cars and armed robbery and things that they've never been given any sense of control. They've been put in foster homes where they had no control over even who they lived with, let alone the other things we'd want in life, are given control of a multi-million-dollar boat and said, you know enough, go sail this thing. And we sit there and watch them sail it. And then at the end of the day, their probation officer, their foster care worker, their foster family, whoever their kind of main people are at the dock, and they bring in this boat successfully. And I mean, every Friday there'd be these cheers and there'd be tears, and just an amazing change experience that we saw. So much so that these clients, if I see them walking around town, they will come give me hugs. These tough guys that were on probation, and kids that were just really at a rough spot. So we're doing that. I'm doing this program, and I see that I missed like 10 calls from my wife, which is never a good sign. And
when your wife is war dialing you, something
totally
big is up, right?
I mean, your heart just sinks after one of those days where, I've seen this change in these kids, and the messages go from I'm at the primary care doctor to I'm at the hospital to we're getting x-rays with your daughter, or she didn't say your daughter, to with our daughter. My daughter's maybe 4 or 6 weeks old at this time. So I meet them over at the hospital, and they find out that she has a heart condition called a PDA and an ASD. I don't remember what it stands for, but it's basically a hole between the chambers and a hole outside of the chambers of her heart. And they determined that it's not something that's life-threatening at the moment, but that she's going to need heart surgery. And so over the next, so that would have been summer, like July 2011. So January, fast forward, we've had her on this heart medication where there's been fluid being pulled off her heart. She's going to the bathroom every hour or so, which means we're waking up every hour or two at night. She has to have these breast milk milkshakes so that she can get enough calories. We're just trying to get her weight up so that she can have this surgery. The day of that surgery finally comes, and the doctor's in there for a really long time, like way longer than he should be in there. And he comes out and says, "Hey, can you come into this room?" Which didn't feel good. It just seemed like something was coming. And he says, we can't do surgery today because your daughter has a left pulmonary stenosis. And if we put in this device, what's going to happen is it would cut off all of the oxygen and blood to her left lung, and her lung would then die. So she actually needs full-on open heart surgery. So this day that felt like this is the end, we're almost there. Now we're like back at it. And so fast forward to May. She has open heart surgery. We live at the Ronald McDonald
How old
house.
is she at that point, Joe, in May?
It's a month before her first birthday. So she's like 11 months old.
Yeah.
And we stay at the Ronald McDonald house. She gets discharged successfully. It's about 4 or 6 weeks later. She has a checkup. Everything's going great. They say she's perfectly normal. Everything's going to be fine. She ends up being fine. It's cured. But a few weeks after that, I'm then diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And what we thought was the end of our medical chapter becomes the beginning of then my medical chapter. And so we jump back in. We go down to a cancer institute in Texas. And during this whole time, I had launched Practice of the Practice. And so when you launch a blog and a website and a podcast in the middle of this kind of stuff, you have to ask yourself, why am I doing a podcast when my daughter's about to have heart surgery? Or why am I not spending time with my family when I'm about to have cancer treatment? So from the very beginning, I had this hyper focus that trained me to cut out the fat so that I was present for my family. And I won't go through all the medical side for me, but the thyroid turned out fine, ended up going well.
It couldn't have been fun.
No, there was this one day, the first day of treatment, I remember, I meet with the billing person, and this lady says, take lots of pictures because you're going to lose your hair. And for one, it's super insensitive. Nothing against people that have no hair, but
hey, don't be racialist against those of us who are follically disadvantaged.
I actually saw a research study that looked at different combinations of facial hair and head hair, and they found that women find a beard with a bald head the sexiest combination. So you are halfway there.
So I should grow a beard.
And I should shave my head.
Friend, my dear friend and guest on Legends and Losers, Will Little, he rocks that look big time, and he's got, or I should say, bigly. and he's got one of these real long, like I'm a serious mofo kind of beards. But at the same time, he's got this almost monk-like radiating awesomeness that comes out of him. Anyway, so I seen him, and it's kind of his brand. He and I talked about this, right? This head with these giant, bright, beaming eyes and smile, and then this fucking awesome man beard. So maybe that's what I should do, huh?
Maybe. I mean, the combination of your head and my beard, I mean, it's the sexiest man out there, really.
That's starting to sound weird to me, Joe.
It is. So
I was just checking something while you were sharing this story. You know how sometimes people say stuff and it pops something in your head. I was reminded of this quote, and I couldn't remember the exact words. The quote's from Jose Ortega Gasset. And the quote is, "We cannot put off living until we are ready. The most salient characteristic of life is its urgency, here and now, without any possible postponement. Life is fired at us, point blank."
I love that.
Right? And I don't know, as you were sharing how you went from your daughter's dealing with her problem to bam, and now cancer, I don't know why that popped into my head that, this life gets fired at us at point blank.
Oh man. And so that day my wife was sick and so was my daughter. So I was doing all that alone, and I go down to get this blood test, and it's this chaotic scene where people's names are being called out. They're like, fill out your green form, fill out your green form. And so I sit down and I'm just like overwhelmed. I'm so frustrated at this woman. I'm so mad. And I think, as a therapist, what would I tell my clients to do? Well, I tell them, fake it till you make it. I'd tell them, take some deep breaths and, have some gratitude. And so I'm like, okay, fucking therapist Joe, let's see if this mumbo jumbo works.
So let's see if this crap that I've been
teaching for 10 years
on people. Right.
So I'm like, okay, fake it till you make it. So I'm like, okay, put a smile on. You're all good. Take some deep breaths. What are you happy for? We have enough savings that we aren't going to have a spaghetti dinner. We have insurance where this Texas hospital's in network. I have one of the most treatable forms of cancer. And then I still remember looking around and I see this guy who's missing a jaw. And then this couple, maybe in their 70s or 80s walks in, and they're both just so frail. I can't tell which one has cancer and which one doesn't. And I have this immense gratitude that comes out of it, where exactly what that quote just said, where we've got the here and now. We've got our own sense of kind of where we need to head, but we also don't know where we're headed, and that life becomes this adventure that could end this afternoon, or it could last till I'm 105. But I think that you don't need to have cancer to have that happen. And in fact, I was kind of disappointed by cancer because I felt like people always have these gigantic light bulb moments, but in the midst of it, you don't always have those moments, and you have to kind of reflect.
Just regular life. You were looking for the sky to part and the Lord to talk to you, or
burning
something.
bush moment. But it's like, no, in your question a while ago was basically, what's it feel like to be this kind of superstar consultant, or however you framed it in the therapy world, is that it crept in where it just was, what's the next reasonable step here? Well, I'm working full time at a community college at the time. I have this side gig, this blog. It makes sense that I would podcast more frequently to build an audience that's outside of me sitting in my counseling practice.
And so the thing that's very fascinating to me about this is you are a perfect example of how the technology creates an opportunity, or maybe platform, for a type of entrepreneur that heretofore would be very hard to exist. Right? Because it's a pretty niche-y world you're in, yes?
Oh, yeah.
And so, and I love this phrase, you niche down. And when, we talked a little bit about this when I was on your show, but like you're in this, you're a category king of this very tight fucking category, right? You are the guru to people with generally counseling practices, right? Although I guess it's probably maybe a little bit wider than that.
Yeah, I would say primarily
Healthcare practices,
counseling, but it's growing more into healthcare. So
healthcare practices,
but primarily I would say private pay healthcare practices.
okay. And so the cool thing about that is, here was this niche, this micro category of practitioner that's a very valuable one in the world, provides obviously an incredibly important service. And in the past, if I was one of those types of practitioners and I wanted to consume, let's just call it content, educate myself to become better and better, sure, there were always industry magazines and so forth, but the technology provides an opportunity for someone like you to build a very valuable audience and therefore business around that audience, deliver something that's really important. And the cost of distribution in the past and the cost of marketing, that is to say, the category that wanted you and you who wanted the category, those things are tough to pull off in a non-digital world, or let's say tougher, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think about.
I mean, you could have had a magazine,
right,
in the old days, but what you're able to do today is much more powerful, much richer, is it not?
Right. I mean, so go back to the 80s or 90s before a lot of this was available. Yeah, I could have had my 18-hour tape set that you buy for $29.99, but I would have had to order 500 of them to make it cost effective. They'd sit in my garage. I'd have to then go mail them out one at a time, and I'd have to try to market them, usually at probably a conference or something like that. And the amount of bootstrapping that is just unnecessary now in regards to building an audience that's highly focused. It's incredible. There's a guy I met. So I just took up curling. I did this learn to curl.
Whoa, slow down here, handsome. You just took up curling?
Yeah, the ice sport in the
Olympics.
No,
I know. I'm Canadian, right? I grew up in Montreal, Canada. I know what curling is.
Okay.
So before you tell me this, I need to know, what was it that called to you about curling?
Oh man, I have wanted to try curling for years, and then there was a poster at a urinal that said "Learn to curl."
Well, there was a poster on the urinal, above the urinal.
Yeah, it wasn't even like some Google ad or something. It was a poster in a urinal.
Learn to curl.
Look at that! I want to learn.
And you were taking care of business, and you thought, you know what? It's time. This is a sign from. I've been waiting for a sign. And this is my sign?
I have a sign about curling in the bathroom. And then, a friend of mine told me that he was one of the founders of the Learn to Curl program here. And I was like, what? How did I never know this about you? And so he invited me to come do Learn to Curl and to join.
There are curlers lurking amongst us that we might not know.
Seriously. And as I've told people, my own therapist was like, oh, yeah, I'm a curler. I'm like, what? And actually, my first league night, I went up against my therapist, in curling. I didn't drink as much curling that night as maybe I would other nights. So I'm talking to this guy at this, and he, 3 years ago, was super unhappy with his job. And he was passionate about bagpipes and starts selling bagpipes online, and is now the leading bagpipe and bagpipe part distributor, and sells kilts, does it all. And this random guy in Northern Michigan is the bagpipe guy. And this would never have happened.
This is exactly my point. Yeah. These opportunities to niche down and become the category king of a very tight, you are the category king of gurus to healthcare, to small healthcare practitioners. Yeah, that would have been so hard to do in 1985 or 1995, right? And so you have
if you're upset with your life now, and I don't know if you experienced this when you're at a social gathering, we were talking about our neighborhoods and how cool of neighborhoods we have. But when someone is complaining about their job, do you feel frustrated? There's no reason in the world we live in now to stay in a job you hate. You can create something with the digital world we're in. Does that frustrate you? Because sometimes I get a little irked by that.
Yeah, and the digital world today just, I think, provides more opportunity, but I always sort of felt that way. And how I would characterize it, Joe, is I think there are people for whom they either don't know or act as if they don't know that you can design your life. You know, to your point, life isn't like the weather. It's not this fucking thing that like even the way we talk makes me crazy. You know, how's life treating you, right? It's this very passive, and people describe their situation in life as though it's this this thing that, even if they don't use this dramatic a phrasing, it's this thing they're a victim of, as opposed to this thing they're responsible for. And look, of course, I'm not an idiot. Sometimes bad shit happens and you get fucking cancer, or your baby is seriously sick, and there's nobody that designs that. We just got to man up, or man up as the case may be, and navigate that shit. But that said, our life is something we can design. And so I think just letting people know that, and then if they're willing to accept that's the case, then the next question is, okay, well, then how would I do that in my life?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a very powerful conversation to have with people.
And I think that's one of those things that I don't know if I stole it from someone or if it's just kind of came to me. I probably stole it, but the idea that either you happen to life or life happens to you, that idea that we're just handed, here's what your life is, just take it, versus exactly what you're talking about, that kind of lifestyle design, where you and I think it's an ongoing process too, where you're continually evaluating. A couple of years ago, I said, well, what if I took Fridays off this summer as an experiment? I'm really big on experiments. I'm big on, let's try it out. We'll see what happens. If it doesn't work, we can always change it. Then if I quote fail, it's just, information versus feeling like a big failure. So it works really well. My salary or my, financial growth keeps going up, and I'm having Fridays off. So then I keep doing it throughout that next year. And the next summer I said, well, what if I took Mondays off in addition and just see what happens? Well, what it forced me to do is to be as efficient as possible for 3 days a week, and to say, what do I need to touch with my multiple things I'm working on? What do I need to take off of my plate? And it really forced me to say, why am I wearing all these hats? Because I was the thing that was plugging up the system. It was my ability of time, my ability to scale, my ability to actually outline a vision versus bringing in competent people that I could pay at a much lower hourly rate and multiply my time and income. And I've been able to sustain that for the most part, except for once in a while when we have a couple things going on with Practice the Practice, where I get to design 4-day weekends for myself. I get to do those things, but it's a strategic decision that forces me in a certain way to grow the business outside of just it being my own time.
I love it. And there's been something that's been present in my life lately. I'd be curious if this was present for you as you were going from a 3-day weekend to a 4-day weekend, Joe. I notice more and more that if you say yes to something, like saying yes to something means saying no to a whole lot of other things. Mm-hmm. One yes has gigantic ripple effects, butterfly effect in your life. And so I find I'm getting more and more ruthless, more and more rigorous, however you want to say it, with what I say yes to.
And I would even flip that and say, when you say no, it opens up a bunch of yeses too. So if I say no to something new in, the progressive practice of the practice, I'm saying yes to my health. I'm saying yes to my family. I'm saying yes to whatever other things. And so I think it's true in both directions, that setting those very clear boundaries on what you're going to do, what's the impact that you are called, whether you want to say called to do, want to do, whatever words you use, so that you stay focused on that thing and ask yourself, this is a good opportunity, but is it my opportunity right now? Or is this something that's a great idea, but it's for somebody else?
Do you get a lot of, hey, I want to take you out to lunch. I want to This is one I get. I love this one. I want to network with you. And I get a lot of, would you evaluate my business plan or idea, or I want to talk to you about my category design. There's a lot of that. And so I'm curious, you must have a lot of that stuff coming at you. How do you deal with all that?
Yeah. So I will, for one, I have someone check my email. So she weeds a lot of that out, and we have a response for certain types of joint ventures. And there's a lot of just things that come through that I know it's just people that they're askers. They're not genuinely wanting to collaborate. So I've trained someone to kind of siphon those off of me even seeing them, because I'm a giving kind of person. I kind of have a rule that someone locally, I'll meet with just about anybody locally for a cup of coffee. I don't plan to get business locally. I think it's just good to know people in a small community. Traverse City is not gigantic, and I want to know people here, even if I never make a dime off them, which may be different than other people's situations. When it comes to joint ventures, I'm really careful about who I help, and I usually do a little snooping around to see who they are, what they've done, how long they've been on my email list. Just having an idea of, do I see this as just giving back to making the practice world better? Because there's times that I just say, hey, I want the private practice world to be better. And this person seems like someone that has some hunger there, and they want to just make it better. And maybe they want to make some money too, but I want to help them get started and be one of those first people that believed in them. That's one purpose. If it's, if this is a joint venture, then I may explore what an affiliate relationship looks like, or some sort of profit sharing or sponsorship. Or do they kind of fall into the consulting category that really they should be paying me for consulting? And so if I kind of know the intention that I want to get out of it, then I can push the conversation towards those different ways.
And I would have thought that you're at a place where it's very hard to sort out all that inbound.
Yeah. By the time it gets to me, most of it's been fielded off by Emily, my director of details.
Director of details. I like that. That's great.
Yeah. I stole that from Grant Baldwin. He's a great podcaster, and his director of details helped me get scheduled.
I like that. I like that. I love my director of details, Dandy Candy. She's a miracle.
Oh, she's been amazing to work with.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. I'd be surprised if it was anything other than that. She's a miracle.
Yeah.
Now, how did you get into microfinance, Joe?
There's this guy named Rob Bell who has a podcast. He's in Southern California, and he used to run a pretty progressive church that we would attend, and a number of years ago. And he started talking about microfinance, and I'd never heard of it before. And then I read Muhammad Yunus's book, Banker to the Poor, and was really inspired by some of the concepts. The idea of charging really poor people 10 to 15% interest, for me, seemed like giving credit cards to people. So wanted to find a way that we could do it much cheaper than that. But we had already gone to Haiti, and I was trying to figure out what my role was down there, because my mom is a nurse practitioner. So whenever I would go, I would be the pharmacist because I could read. And I have no pharmacy training, and I could speak a little bit of Creole to say, "Du guen, du fois pas jus," so take 2 twice a day. But that's about the extent of my Creole, is mostly pharmaceutical terms. But that wasn't what I felt passionate about. But people needed the medicine, and it's where I fit in at the time. But I really wanted to explore what would be a repeatable, sustainable thing within microfinance. And so you have these $500 loans that you give to a group of 5 women. Each woman gets $100, but they get it kind of in a graded system. So the money is coming in over time, and then they pay a slightly more back. But that $100, what can happen is they can buy a big bag of rice. They can then repackage it and sell it for $300 over the next month or so. And then they have the startup capital. They've paid back their loan, and then they can keep things going. And that idea of a donation kind of going through a community over and over and over was really attractive to me, and really helped kind of think differently about the way we tend to do global lending, the way that we tend to do nation development, and even smaller community development.
Well, I want to thank you for it. I've fallen in love with microfinance. I learned about Kiva.org years ago,
and
have been active ever since. And I just think it's an amazing idea, because the ability to create a loan that is, very serviceable, that either a bank wouldn't write or wouldn't write at that level of economics, that is to say, such a low interest rate, ends up meaning that a lot of small entrepreneurs around the world can't get access to financing. And to your point, there are businesses in the world, small businesses in the world, that are looking for $500 or $300 or $1,200. I mean, what I'd be curious, what sizes are the loans that you guys are executing?
Oh, they were $100 loans.
Yeah.
And then after they paid that back, they could have a $150 loan. I mean, the average income for a Haitian is $100 to $150 per year. And so you're giving an annual salary to this person up front. I mean, imagine the trust if someone gave you, for the average American, $50,000 and said, we want you to pay this back. We want you to do it in community with 4 other people. And when you pay it back, then that money is going to go to someone else in your community. And if you don't pay it back, then that money won't go to other people in your community. That has a much different tone to it than just a regular bank. And people can make a huge difference at whatever phase they're at. When we were down in Kalamazoo, there was a group of 4 other families that we were friends, and all the guys have been college buddies, and we stayed connected, and we'd have a monthly potluck. And we had all committed on, like teacher and early counselor salaries to give 1% of our income to a communal fund. And then every month we would talk about, with that 1%, what do we want to do with it? And we had decided at the front end that a third of it was going to go to something in Kalamazoo, a third of it was going to go to something in the United States, and then a third of it was going to go to something global. And we had to come to a unanimous decision. There wasn't like majority rules. We didn't want anyone to get steamrolled. And so we were forced as a community of friends to talk through. I tended to be more on the accountability. I want to see numbers. What are we actually going to do to make sure this isn't just kind of a handout over and over side? And then there's other people that were more on the, this person's in need and hurting. We need to just help this person. And so we had to have dynamic conversations as friends that you don't usually have around a potluck. It's like the weather, and maybe you get into politics.
How many people did you pull together to do this?
So we wanted to keep it small to our group of friends. So it fluctuated between 4 and 6 families.
Wow.
And so
what a
every
fascinating
month,
idea.
Well, and every month, as these kind of fresh out of college 20-somethings, we would be giving away thousands of dollars, because when you look at what 1% of an annual salary of $30,000 and 1% of an annual salary of $50,000 or wherever we were each at, that starts to add up over time. And so what happened was our radars were up for where are there needs in the world to improve the world. And so like this one guy, I remember the secretary at his office had just been diagnosed with cancer. She had a really aggressive form, and she had been just paying to ride the bus, but she needed to be on the bus like all the time. And so we all chipped in to buy her a cheap car, and she was able to then drive herself to these appointments and get back to work and not lose money from that. Whereas if we hadn't said we'll give 1% to this communal fund, we wouldn't have been able to do that. Or someone says, hey, my friend just moved to Turkey to help with refugees there. They need more blankets. Can we donate to that? Rather than every time have to go back to like our friends and do some Kickstarter campaign, we could just say, oh, no, we've got 10 grand in the bank. A third of that's allocated for international aid that we already decided on. Let's take a vote. Okay, we all vote unanimously. Here's $3,000. And so we can move faster, and then our radars were up in a different way than if we had just been, heartwarming people that wanted to give. We actually created a method for that to happen within just our small group of friends.
It's so awesome, Joe. It's so awesome. It's so very, very, very cool of you. And to do it together, I mean, it's a fascinating idea, right? Because I think most of us, certainly, me and my family, we donate what we donate, and we try to make it, a healthy percentage of I don't know what the exact percentage of it is, but it would certainly be more than 1% of our income a year. But we do it on our own, and so in my case, Carrie and I have the conversation, and, we tend to, there's a bunch of charities we've given to for years that we just do our thing with. And then, every year we change some shit up. Right. But doing it together as a community, that's a whole other deal, isn't it?
It is.
Than a
And
discussion
no
with your wife.
We just said, all right, we need to have two people from two different families on the bank account, so that there's some accountability there where no one person or one family has access to the money. And then just put it into this box. If you want to do a check into it, you can. If you want to do cash, we aren't going to say, oh, this family gave 10,000, so they get, this vote, and this family gave 3,000, so they get this vote. No, it was, if you're in, you're in. We won't, keep track of who gave how much, and we aren't going to say, well, is that really 1%? No, we're going to have a
you
level
don't
of
ask
trust.
for audited tax returns.
No. And then it became that we actually had to have deeper conversations as friends. And those four guys in our families still were so close, and we still have these conversations of now that we're growing in, different economic levels than we had in our 20s. How do we continue that theme of helping the world? And so that looks different as we grow older. But we're pushing back against that natural isolation that can happen, especially when you're young and you have kids, where that sense of community, of accountability. One of the guys, they couldn't, his wife had cancer, and they needed to have someone house their child so they could have another child. And it ended up being that his niece had their baby, but we were considering having my wife house their baby. And so that doesn't just happen unless you've had friends.
Holy shit.
Well, and to even have that conversation where, you think about old college buddies, most of them you don't have, traditionally, you don't typically have super deep conversations over a lifetime. But when you intentionally then over time foster those relationships, it then creates a sense of community that's deeper. That doesn't have to start 10 years ago. You can do that now. You in your neighborhood right now with, the Wood Fire Bakery. That's freaking awesome. Yeah,
it is awesome. As we talked about on your show, it's just so great to live in a community. And our guy with the Wood Fired Bakery, now that's a thing that we do, right? And the local market that we go to is like a Cheers-like experience in that, we know who the people are who own the place and work there, and it's a centering place for the community. And all those things matter when creating community. But this idea is a very powerful way to create community, which is we're all going to make a commitment over a lifetime to give this amount, and B, we're going to do it together. And as a result, it's going to drive a set of interactions and conversations amongst us for our lives that we otherwise wouldn't have necessarily had, right? You have to talk more about what's going on in the world and where you can make a difference with your friends than you otherwise would have when you do this. How could you not, right?
Well, I think those of us that have natural leadership tendencies or have developed those tendencies, like you or me or a lot of your listeners, it takes someone to have a vision for these types of things in our community. I remember I had a guide. I had one guide when I was in Nepal that was really good, and I had one guide in Nepal that was really bad. And so the good one, we were hiking there. This would have been between undergrad and grad school. My friend Todd and I went to Nepal. And so we're going up the mountain. We're going to go up to just under 20,000 feet. And we have some altitude sickness. And Nima, our guide, is just insane. He's so awesome. He led IMAX teams up, Everest, and just really cool guy that knew his stuff. And he saw that we were struggling with the altitude. We had done all this training, but just the altitude alone was killing us.
Where were you, and what was your goal?
Yeah, so we were going up to this mountain called Gokyo-ri. Gokyo-ri is said to have the best view of Everest. It looks over this glacier. And our goal really was, we could have gone up and said we touched Everest, and that wasn't important to me as much as having a cool experience. And so the less kind of trained route is the Gokyo-ri route. And so our goal was to see this most beautiful view of Everest and to just have a new experience. So my friend Todd and I are going up every step of the way. It's just terrible. And
are you trying to summit it?
It was walkable without the summit. Really,
okay.
It probably took us 8 days to hike up there.
Wow. And what elevation was your peak elevation goal?
19,800, I want to say.
Wow.
Yeah, we got dropped off by helicopter. I want to say at 8,000, I want to say. But then it's up and down the whole way there. Right after that.
Because you're acclimatizing, right? You go up and then you come back down, and all of that.
And
Yeah.
so you stay at like Namche Bazaar, and then you hike up, and then you come back down, and then you drink a bunch of tea, and the tea is supposed to help, but I think it's just the caffeine in it. So we get up to the peak finally, and we're coming down the mountain, and every breath is like more full than the previous breath on the way down. And so we start picking up our pace, and we find ourselves starting to run down this mountain, and Nima's keeping up, and our porter, who has this like basket on his back with our backpack and some other things in it, he's running down too. And we end up doing 4 days of hiking in 2 days, and get to the bottom and realize that the guy, we had noticed that the porter had twisted his ankle and said, well, can we carry our pack? And it was getting larger and larger. And so Nima had us slow down, but he wouldn't let us carry our pack because obviously that's his livelihood. It's like if a truck driver picked up a hitchhiker and then the hitchhiker was driving when they pulled in, the guy would get fired. And so this guy didn't want to lose his job. But Nima walked us through every step of the way. But because we came down so quickly, we had probably 4 extra days that we could do anything we wanted in Kathmandu, and found out that the Chitwan jungle was like half a day's drive away. So we go down into the Chitwan jungle, which is right at sea level. And the first morning we wake up before dawn because we're going to go on this hike with a guide. And it's like pitch black outside. And it's me, Todd.
And your ass isn't too badly kicked from your rapid descent after your challenging ascent.
No, it was not. I think because we went up so slowly, we were ready to kind of move. And finally, when we had the oxygen, it was like this pent up energy that.
So there was a lot more adventuring left for you to do.
Oh, man. When you go from 19,000 feet to sea level, like you're just slurping the oxygen.
Slurping it.
Slurping it, buddy. So there's this random Peace Corps volunteer. She's on break. And then there's this guy that has flown from the United States to see her. And it's very apparent to me and Todd that he likes this girl. And it's very apparent that she knows this and isn't into him at all. And this guy...
guys are so fucking stupid, aren't they?
Oh, my gosh. I'm sure she gave out vibes well before this moment. But all of us can tell... like. He seems like a guy that would be named Brett. So, like, we'll just name him Brett. So Brett is just like this guy who has no sense of his own self. And so we get in this, like, dugout canoe to go down, and the sun is coming up. The birds are just coming. And he'll lean to one side and be like, oh, my gosh, did you hear that bird? And we'll all have to lean the other way because this dugout canoe is not made to be super stable. And he has no sense of self, no sense of where his body ends or begins. We finally don't fall in and get to the trailhead. And our trail guide says to us, if we see a rhino and he charges, run up a tree.
Oh,
now,
fuck.
If someone says that sentence, a normal person should ask some follow-up questions, like, how frequently do rhinos charge? If I were to run up a tree, could you demonstrate that skill so that I know it?
You know what my question would be? What weapon do I need to defend myself, and do you have one of those for me?
Right, there's so many valid questions that
question.
I should have asked.
Like does a shotgun get this done? I don't know. Like, what do I need here?
Right, and I'm sure the listeners have 50 other questions that 22-year-old Joe should have asked this guide, or that guide should have thought through. But none of those questions were asked. So we're walking through the woods, and we come upon walking through the jungle, we come upon a rhino. It's maybe...
As you do.
As you do. And we're maybe 20 yards away from this rhino. And so this is before digital cameras. So I take a picture, and I think it's good and close. So I naturally, as a 22-year-old, pre-fully developed brain self, I take a step towards this rhino, take another picture.
Oh, fuck.
I take another step forward, take a picture, and he charges. And I go back to like pure carnal instinct, knowing that I was a sprinter in high school. I'm like, I can outrun Brett. I know I can outrun this dude. I know I can outrun Todd in the short run, but he's a long distance runner. And so I'm just tearing through the jungle, just running. And Todd's right behind me. And then finally we don't hear this charging rhino anymore. So we walk back, and our guide is up in a tree. And he comes down and he says, why you no run up tree? And I think that story to me really demonstrates how a lot of guides are and visionaries, where they don't take the time to teach people. That guide failed us and should have walked through how you go up a tree. But when we feel unsafe, we run away. We go back to what we know. I knew how to run, and I knew how to outrun Brett. And so I'm going to go back to my old ways.
Did you even think about trying to climb a tree?
Hell no. Are you kidding me? If I had done that, I would have been like, how do I get up this? This charging rhino would have smashed my leg between him and a tree. And I mean, there's so many things that to me would have gone wrong that I didn't know how to run up trees. I can barely climb trees. I can climb trees if I take my time, but running up a tree, not so much. So it's just, to me, one of those stories that it really points to what it takes.
Get your ass trained.
Get your ass trained.
Get a good guide.
If you're going to be a guide, if you're going to be a visionary for change, you got to teach people. Like, don't be stupid about it.
I love it, Joe. And I love how, even as a young guy coming out of school, you put making a difference, right at the core. It's so fascinating because so many of us took the model of let's try to make a bunch of money and then do something with it after the fact.
Yeah, for me, the model was flipped. I think partially because of just how I was raised. My parents both worked for the schools. My in-laws both worked for the schools. And the message I always got was, if you work hard enough, if you get really good grades, someone else will always give you a job. And so the model after grad school was get a nonprofit job, try to move up to a supervisor. So I became a foster care supervisor. Then slowly moved up and got to work at a community college. The community college, when it comes to counselors and therapists, really is one of the better jobs financially, which still isn't that great, but you get decent health insurance, you get a decent wage for counselors. And so to say I'm going to jump out of that was a big mindset shift for me.
And become an entrepreneur.
Right. But
it's kind of a 180, isn't it?
It can be. But I think that making money always magnifies what's already there. So if you're ripping people off and you're hardly making money and you're just starting out and you're doing it in super unethical ways and you're a jerk to people, if you hit it big, you're going to probably keep those tendencies. If you're the kind of person that wants to improve the world and you're just kind of in the startup phase and then you really land on making more money in some way, usually what happens is it magnifies what's already there. It magnifies our flaws. It magnifies our shortcomings. It also magnifies the areas that we're excited about or that we're passionate about. And so to me, the financial side is less important as much as the personal development, curiosity, growth, adventure side.
Well, and it comes out in everything you do, Joe. So thank you. I also want to thank you so much for helping us share Judge Filer with the world.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That episode's now a part of my email sequence to just share with people. I teared up throughout. I'm a crier. I try not to be, but I've just embraced it. Like I tear up at everything. But I was just amazed at his point of view with the world and what he's done. And that's such a great episode. Anyone that's not listened to it has to go listen to it.
Well, thank you for your help. We have this outrageous BHAG of 1 million downloads of Judge Filer because we want 1 million people to have that experience with him. So, and we got a long way to go.
Yeah, you'll get there. I have no doubt.
Anything else before we wrap, Joe?
Well, I think the big thing I hope people take away from this discussion is you can continue to edit your life. That wherever you're at now, whether you're happy, whether you're sad, whether you're pissed, wherever you're at, you can edit your life. It doesn't usually happen overnight, but if you approach life as an experiment, you'll rarely be disappointed and you'll just learn from it. You'll move on, you'll try something new. And so for me, that's been entirely kind of the approach that I've tried to make with Practice of the Practice and helping people continue to grow.
Well, I love it. And I love that you're a category king of a category that you designed. And you're a great example of how to do that in this new world, that if you get real tight about your niche and you get real legendary about that niche and you have a great point of view, boom. And you certainly look like you're having a ton of fun doing it.
Oh, man. Isn't that what it's all about? You get to make money while you're having fun and, really influencing the world in a positive way.
Well, that's probably a great place to kick out of this wave, Joe. Thank you so much. You're an awesome guy, and I really appreciate you, brother.
Christopher, this has been amazing. Have a great day.
Be legendary, my friend.
Thanks.
Such a great conversation. Thanks again, Joe. And if you love this dialogue with Joe as much as I do, why not share it with social media, right? Why not share it on social media right now and with anyone else in your life who you think would love Joe? Now, speaking of things that are awesome, Heather Clancy and I are working on a new book we call Niche Down. It's really about how you can make your own place in the world and do exactly what Joe just talked about and shared with us. If you would like a preview copy of Niche Down before the book comes out, which is coming out later in 2018, write a review of Legends and Losers on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or anywhere else you experience podcasts, and send us a copy of that review. Email it to blackhole, all one word, blackhole @legendsandlosers.com, and we will send you a free white paper teaser, an overview of the new book, Niche Down, from myself and the incredible Heather Clancy. All right. We would like to thank our good friends at NetSuite. How cool is that? We grew up, we put on our big kid pants, and we actually have a sponsor. Check out netsuite.com/legends, and they will help you turbocharge the growth of your business. netsuite.com/legends. HarperCollins Instant Classic, Play Bigger, How Pirates, Dreamers, and Innovators Create and Dominate Markets. Why not pick up a couple thousand copies today? EquityDirectory.com, connecting you to the startups that you want to get in touch with. If you're in the startup ecosystem, you need to be on EquityDirectory.com. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking for resources that are willing to come play with you for mostly equity and not too much cash, EquityDirectory.com. OneLifeFullyLive.org. We are the nonprofit helping you live your best life. Dream it, plan it, and live it. Check us out. The number one, lifefullylived.org on the World Wide Web. The Front Row Factor. Transform your life with the art of moment making. This is a great book from our friend and guest, the legendary John Vroman. Check it out, The Front Row Factor. PursuingResults.com. They produce legendary podcasts, and they even produce this one too. If you want to start a podcast, but you don't want to do any of the technical mumbo jumbo, check out PursuingResults.com. InterviewValet.com. If you're a thought leader, you're an author, you're an entrepreneur, or you're just somebody who you think you're smart and you want to share your awesomeness with the world, check out InterviewValet.com. You be the guest, and they do the rest. They'll book you on leading podcasts and help your leading thoughts get out there. Also, check out our friend and guest, Brother James, BROTHA, James.com. Motivational music for your corporate event. If you are an event planner, you're a marketing person, you're doing some cool stuff, and you want to, instead of having a motivational speaker, have the motivational musician who rocks, Brother James. Check him out at brotherjames.com. And always the World Wildlife Fund, WWF.org. We have one planet, and we need to take care of it. Check them out, WWF.org. Now, we need to remind you that this Oddcast is a sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, and we would love you just a little bit extra if you shared the shit out of it. All rights do remain disturbed. We must remind you that this Oddcast is clearly produced in a studio that does contain nuts. Hey, man, that suit is you. In the event of a business bullshit conversation, take 2 Legends and Losers and tweet us in the morning. Never jog near a prison. If you haven't changed your mind lately, how do you know you have one? Support your local entrepreneurs. Watch out for Putin. Thank you, Candy Dandy. I love you, Mom and Dad. And hey, Colin, this Oddcast really ties the room together, doesn't it? Today, our deepest apologies go out to Martin Scarelli, Chief Executive Officer of Turning Pharmaceuticals. Sorry, Marty, we just ran out of time for you. That's it, my friends. Thank you so much. We appreciate you being here, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on another episode of Legends and Losers.